Franca, much recently when the entire surge in bandit activities and insecurity spurred in the country, we saw President Bola Ahmed Tinubu meeting with heads of security agencies, and part of the resolutions that were made there was that there will be a withdrawal of police escorts from VVIPs and ministers in the country. A directive that many Nigerians believe these VVIPs and the ministers and even the Nigerian police did not adhere to thoroughly. But now we are also hearing that the president has put his foot down and is insisting on the withdrawal of these VVIPs. What do you think of this, directive? And is this a viable solution to our security woes?
Well, to start with, the number of policemen we have vis-a-vis the number of Nigerians shows you that we have limited number. We actually are understaffed in that department. And now, after doing that mathematics, when you come to the fact that some VIPs have as much as 5 per person, whereas we don't even have enough to go around, maybe 200 persons for one police person, it becomes imperative to do something. And what he has done, I think, is the way to go. If you cut down on the number of escorts following the VIPs and then push the other ones back, we have a more formidable police force. We have more hands tackling crime. But the problem is, there's something about change. At any point in time, change is not palatable. It comes with readjustments and all of that. On both sides of the table, I think some of the police escorts following the VVIPs might find that more comfortable, more conducive for them because there are privileges that come with that. And the VIPs themselves are so used to having this coverage. So when you take it away from them, expect that on both sides, both from the police and the VVIPs, it won't really go down well. But it is something that needs to be done, and it is something that has been done. And I like the fact that the president is putting down his foot and saying, hey, we've got to do this. If he can ensure that, like he has said, we have more police persons being recruited, with all the measures he's put in place to ensure that we enlarge our police force, then perhaps in the future, if they think it's necessary, they could review this decision. But for now, given the situation on ground, it is the way to go.
Well, interesting take. Yesterday on the floor of the Senate, we saw Senator Abdul Ningi, vehemently decrying the fact that the entire withdrawal of police escorts from VVIPs was not done properly, considering the fact that even within the National Assembly, some lawmakers had their police escorts withdrawn, including Abdul Ningi himself, while others still had their police escorts intact. Why do you think there's this disparity in carrying out the president's orders? Is this a case of favoritism? Is this a case of man, no man? What exactly is going on?
Well, that is one place where we would have to use our wild guess now. Now, I would think that probably there are some persons who have a closer affinity to their escorts, and probably the escorts are staying on. And this now lies on the Nigerian police force to say, we sent you there, you've got to come back. I wouldn't think it's favoritism as such, because I've seen cases of transfers where people are transferred from particular offices and their bosses go to every length they can to ensure that they stay back. Probably there is some lobbying going on behind the scenes to see if they can be retained and all of that. But no, it shouldn't be. If they are going to withdraw escorts, then it has to be across board. This is not a case of the animal farm where some animals are equal and some are more equal than others. We have to show that we have a strong will to enforce by ensuring that everybody, every escort that is supposed to be withdrawn is withdrawn. If that is not done, then people will begin to take personal measures to ensure that they get their own escorts back.
But is there a reason why, as a country, we have not yet explored the option of private security, services for protection of even government officials, VVIPs, ministers, and the rest? I mean, there are private security outfits that can offer the same set of services that the Nigerian police offers to these individuals. And the president, in his magnanimity, was also, kind enough to let them know that, we are withdrawing these police escorts from you. However, you can go to the NSCDC, you can go to, other security agencies that are not the police or the military to get police escorts. Why are we not exploring these other options? Or why are they not exploring these other options?
Talking about private private security guards now. I would think that some of them actually have those, but they do not come cheap.
Yeah.
They do not come cheap. Now, when you look at the cost of getting 5 private guards, probably you're going to be paying from your pocket. It doesn't look attractive enough. But you talked about the NSCDC and other forms of, paramilitary agencies that they could go to.
Yeah.
On the average, the Nigerian would look at an NSCDC as not so security. I think there's something about the police uniform and the way they come.
But they carry weapons.
Yeah,
and they are saddled with the responsibility of protecting national assets, amongst many other things.
It is more or less a thing of the mind. It's a psychological thing. Yeah. People tend to think that the military, as in the soldier, navy, air force, and then the police, are the main security. It's just something that's been ingrained.
More sophisticated.
I tell you, it's been ingrained in our mind. For a very long time, we didn't have the NSCDC. Yeah. That came in later on in the picture. So there's this kind of skepticism, if you ask me. Yeah.
Well, interesting take. The president had also, stated that if any minister needs police protection for any assignment that requires police protection, they have to obtain a presidential clearance for these escorts, while also writing to the Inspector General of Police, who now transmits to the presidency for clearance. Do you think this might be abused by some of these VVIPs and the ministers?
Well, it will go a long way to help, but again, we know the red tape in Nigeria. Yeah. So if I do not particularly like you, yours is going to take a longer process. That is if I don't stifle it completely. While if I like somebody, then the person is going to have an express attention. So I think that is one of the reasons why this may not work very well. I think there should be a way of not having to go through red tape before having those. Probably you just send your assignments ahead and then they are given attention. Yeah. But again, national assignments are such that I think there is a kind of protocol that is attached to them. So for me, remove the clause of having to go through different stages to get that, and then make it something that once I have an assignment, I follow one channel, just one channel. I don't have to go through multiple channels to get the protection. That might make things easier and more credible.
Well, talking about abusing those privileges, are Nigerians, believing of this directive from the president? Because when the order was given, a lot of Nigerians were skeptical about it and were like, you know what, some of these police officers who are loyal to their bosses, like you said, might even decide not to just wear uniforms and, wear their normal out of plain uniform, plain clothes, and go with their principles, protecting them without anybody raising an eyebrow. How can we ensure that that is also checkmated, so that we don't have these individuals flouting the president's orders and playing with the minds of Nigerians?
The question is, were they just withdrawn or were they reassigned? Because if you have been withdrawn and you are not reassigned to a particular duty, then there's room for all of this, going where you like, doing what you want to. But if you were withdrawn and then reassigned to a particular duty post, then there should be monitoring from the police force itself to ensure that you are at your new duty post. And then, of course, we know that the highest form of discipline is supposed to be seen within the forces. If anybody is caught, flouting orders, the person is withdrawn, or, some kind of sanction. That will go a long way to send a message, a strong message, or a deterrent to others who have that in mind.
Yeah. Well, as a form of, bottleneck and all those bureaucratic bottlenecks, don't you think that ministers and VVIPs always writing to the IG for, clearance, or writing to the presidency for presidential clearance for escorts will at some point become too burdensome? Requests come in, requests are approved, and some people might even abuse those privileges of having to make those requests. Is there a point where we'll begin to see some of these bureaucratic bottlenecks with regards to getting this approval?
I can assure you that there will be cases that will be exceptional, because there are going to be emergencies. There are going to be times when a minister just has to up and go, and there might be no time to go through all of those bottlenecks. Yeah. Are you telling me that they will stop the minister from carrying out national assignments because he has not gone through that process? So I see a point where there will have to be some form of arrangements for emergency provision for such assignments. And that, again, like you said, talking about abuse, there has to be a clear definition of emergency national assignment, so that if I'm going for a social function, of course, that is not a national assignment. It is my social assignment, and I should not expect to be given approval for such assignments.
Well, interesting take. But from my own perspective, I think that a lot of these VVIPs would or might, abuse this entire arrangement. And I'm particularly concerned about, people who are saying that the police escorts might decide to wear plain clothes. That is also another aspect that needs to be looked into. And you stated that if they were withdrawn, they have to be reassigned. Now, if they're being reassigned, from the time that the president gave out the orders up until now, we should have seen or heard something from the Nigerian police. Or so number of policemen have been withdrawn. I believe the IG stated something like that. We heard about the withdrawal, but we did not hear, or we have not heard anything about the reassignment of these police officers to other duties. Don't you think that the IG owes the IG and the Nigerian police both owe Nigerians an explanation as to what the new designation of these withdrawn officers are right now?
Let us give them the benefit of the doubt and imagine that they are going through some administrative process to get this done. With the kind of vehemence with which we've seen on all the papers today, we saw the president breathing hard, talking about having the escorts withdrawn, he's serious and all of that. Just like we have heard it, I'm sure that the police force has heard it, and I'm sure they know at this point that something has to be done. But I think they might be taking time out to do the reassignments, and they will get us informed. But again, we heard from the papers too that see something, say something. So both within the police force itself and ordinary Nigerians, I think if you see a convoy or you go somewhere and you see some persons who should not have that number of escorts having more escorts, Nigerians should grow to the point where they are able to speak out. Now, most of us speak out in our drinking places, we speak out in our parlors, but when it comes to actually going to the public places where the people who can take action about our complaints are to register our complaints, Nigerians are complacent. So I think there are boxes, suggestion boxes here and there. I think we have the Servicom, and there are several other channels where you can pass information to the government. So anybody who sees some VIPs with more escorts than they should have, or that thinks he's seen a policeman who should not be doing escort on plain clothes, escorting somebody, the person should do well to actually...
Now, this is a call for whistleblowing, but do we have, good whistleblowing protection in the country at the moment?
In the past, we've seen some persons blow the whistle successfully, and in other quarters, we've seen some people not so successful in blowing the whistle. Now that this is in place, it is high time to put a process in place where people have witness protection and where people can safely blow the whistle and go their way. I do think that anybody who is serious about blowing the whistle can do that successfully. Now, it behoves the police force not to insist that you have to come in person, you have to go through a process, you have to, things that are going to expose you, or make you unsafe. There should be a system put in place where I can safely report and go home and nobody knows that I have done such.
Well, at the end of the day, the most important aspect of this is to ensure that Nigerians are protected. The president had specifically stated that vulnerable Nigerians need protection, not VVIPs. And there was a time when, talks of state policing, were flying all around. And most recently, we have seen the president, lending his voice to that line of thought. Governors of the southwestern states also had a meeting stating that they are backing state policing. 19 northern governors also held their own meeting backing state policing. Do you think that, there are works on the way to ensure that some of the security outfits that we have, like the Amotekun Corps, the Hizbah Police, the Bubago, would at some point be, transformed into state policing outfits, in addition to the Nigerian police, to be able to fight this insecurity situation and bring it to an end?
If you ask me, I think they have already been acting as state police without the tag. All they needed was a tag to make them legitimate. So this is the time to actually go ahead and do what it takes to make them legitimate. It would surprise you that beyond the names you've mentioned, in various states they have institutions in place already. They have some outfits in place that are holding the brief, and actually doing some security work. So all it's going to take is move them to the next level, give them a legitimate name, give them tax, give them the necessary permissions to function properly as state police. And it would amaze you at what can be accomplished, because for some persons, all they need is the nod. They know what to do, they know how to go about this policing, but they just need a nod from the government to say, okay, you're legitimate, run with it. And I think we're going to see some transformation in the way security outfits operate.
Well, quite very optimistic takes there from Francisca. We hope that in the long run, when the state policing structure comes into play, Nigerians will certainly benefit immensely from that arrangement. While still staying with the president's orders, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has ordered that a panel be constituted in order to pay 1.5 trillion naira debt owed to local contractors in the country. This is seen on the front page of the Nation newspaper. The president has also asked that more patronage should be given to indigenous firms in the country. Quite very good news for these local contractors, I must say, Francisca. We saw them protesting some couple of weeks ago in a rather dramatic way, where they, held, they had a coffin with the picture of the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, something that has been heavily criticized, by the way. But for some reason, it has yielded results, because now the president has lent his voice to it and has ordered that 1.5 trillion naira be paid to them.
Well, ab initio, I would say also that I do not like the fact that they had to go to that length. Yeah. Whether you like it or not, Wale Edun acts for us as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There should be a limit to some of the things that should be done to such public officers. If you ask me, without going through all that drama, just being present in certain places and making their position known and all of that, making demands, would have yielded the same result. Because if we think, or if we say that it is the carrying of the coffin that made the president yield, then more persons are going to go the dramatic way, and who knows what they are going to do in a bid to get attention. Yeah. But a laborer, deserves his wages. If these local contractors have actually used their money to execute projects, then they absolutely need to be paid, and then paying them this money will go a long way to encourage persons who have contracts to do to go the whole hog, to make sure that there's quality and standard in what they do. But if I'm going to invest my money and I'm not sure if I will get paid or when I will get paid, then there is the temptation to cut corners so that I don't put in as much as to get stranded when the 5-year wait or the 8 or 10-year wait begins for my money to come out. And then talking about using local contractors, it is absolutely the way to go if we are serious about building our own local entrepreneurship. All I will say is that there should be monitoring. There should be assessments of the standard of these projects. They should ensure that we do not have more building collapse. We do not have more structural defects because we are going the way of local contractors. This is not aimed at saying that our local contractors are substandard. I'm just saying that it is normal that human beings will do better when they are supervised and monitored. So we have to make sure that when we ask our local contractors to do these jobs, we go all out to ensure that the standard of the jobs do not go down. If not, we'll find ourselves doing a reverse again and going back to a place where we have to, go with foreigners to get our jobs done.
Well, in talking about monitoring, it's quite important as well. I believe that the reason why we continue to have infrastructure that is substandard in some quarters, of course, there are contractors who execute their jobs fantastically well, but then you also find that on both sides, on the side of the federal government and also on the side of the contractors, both are erring parties. And erring parties in the sense that as it stands right now, people are becoming more and more afraid of government contracts. One, because of issues like this, debts. You go to the bank, you take a facility, a loan facility, you execute a project for the government in whatever capacity, and then you have to wait for quite a number of years to be able to recoup your money, not even to talk about the profit that you might make out of that particular contract. And also, when that happens, you find some other contractors trying to cut costs because they are not certain when, the money that they use for the contract will return. And in cutting costs, There you'd find substandard structures, you'd find, buildings or infrastructure not being up to standard the way that they should be. So in this entire situation, I think while we knock the government for withholding some of these funds from the contractors for a number of years, which has necessitated this outburst from them, it's also important to knock the contractors for some sharp practices that they do due to the negligence of the government as well. It's just a chain reaction that keeps going round and round and round. And I think if the contractors are well paid by the government, there will be absolutely no need for them to cut corners. And if any contractor is found wanting or found cutting corners, and certainly the full wrath of the law should be brought down on them.
If I were the government, I would inspect your project, and if I am not satisfied, I would not pay. Now, if you go around the train stations we have, the modern train stations that were built, I would say kudos to the former Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, because I was on some of those inspection tours. I would hear him repeatedly ask the Chinese persons who were building, if it were your country, would you accept this? Now, the Mobolaji Johnson station, they had just a couple of toilets, maybe 3-4 toilets, and he insisted that he has not seen a place in China where people queue to use the loo when they go to a train station as big as this. He insisted they should demolish that part and then make at least 10 toilets so that we have 5 female, we have 5 male. And even when they said it's not part of the design, he insisted that the design was drawn by somebody and should be withdrawn. So we should go that way. We should ensure that we do as much as we can to monitor and insist on the right quality of jobs before we pay contractors. There should be value for money when the government gives you a contract.
Well, quite interesting take there, Francisca. With just a few minutes to go, we are still hoping that our guest joins us virtually. But there is yet another move made by the federal government, a push for 17.89 trillion naira new loans to finance the 2026 budget. I wish we had our financial analyst, financial expert here in the studio with us to talk about it. But in the words of Dr. Aliyu Elias, he would always say that borrowing is not bad. As long as the economy is thriving well, all countries borrow, all economies depend on loans, and it just gets to a certain extent before it becomes, a bad loan. But what do you think, Francisca?
Well, looking at the budget, I'm asking myself, what happened to the budget for 2025? We are told that this is December, right? So the year is actually gone. We are told that that budget has not been implemented yet. Several government agencies said they were depending on the budget for last year to operate up till this point. So then, why are we going to borrow again? Because I know that we must have borrowed for the 2025 budget, which is yet to be executed. So is it that we just need to borrow? I haven't seen a situation where without exhausting the first tranche of what has been borrowed, we go ahead and borrow again. So I think we should be given some explanations around what happened to the 2025 budget. Of course, governments will borrow at some point, but we need to be sure that when money is being borrowed, it is being used judiciously for capital projects, not to borrow for recurrent expenditure, because that means it's going to be a perpetual borrowing. I borrow this year, do recurrent expenditures. Next year, I borrow, do the same. When exactly am I going to pay off these loans? Or am I not going to be creating problems for the people coming ahead of me? So borrow, yes, but borrow wisely.
Well, talking about those recurrent expenditure and, capital projects, in the current dispensation, many Nigerians believe that President Bola Tinubu has indeed quite paid so much attention to, new infrastructure, capital projects, especially the Lagos Coastal Highway that, has been commissioned and is currently under construction, and quite a number of other major projects that the president has also commissioned in different regions of the country. At some point earlier within the year, I think some members of the Arewa Consultative Forum, or Northern Elders Forum rather, came out to decry the fact that the president was not paying so much attention to capital infrastructure projects in the northern part of the country. But there was some sort of reaction from the presidency with a long list of projects that had been executed or are currently under execution in certain parts of the country, especially the northwestern part of the country, road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, and the rest. But in your opinion, do you think that the current administration, despite its unprecedented debt and unprecedented borrowing, style, do you think the administration is doing well when it comes to capital infrastructure projects?
Well, we have seen a lot of capital projects, yes. We've seen them making strides in that direction, yes. But I still think that more can be done and more should be done.
Yeah.
Now, talking about the outcry from the north that they have not enjoyed capital projects, if you look at the last administration, I would say that the north got a very large and a fair share of capital projects. We had the University of Transportation, Daura, which was given to them. We have the the Kaduna Maradi rail line, which is being built still in the north. We had couples of road projects and all. I think we should get used to this, to the fact that these projects have to be rotational. If today you are enjoying, a huge attention, then you shouldn't cry foul when for some reason the attention shifts to another part of the country. We are all Nigerians, and in fact, we all deserve to see some other portion of the country than our own portion of the country developed. Why? Because you're not going to remain where you are. Now, if you say bring all the capital projects, I'm from the South. If I say come and execute all the projects that you're going to execute in the South, am I living in the South right now? Am I going to remain there? Will I never travel? Will I never use the rail line, the coastal rail line you've talked about? Will I never use the one from Kaduna to Abuja? No, we should all be happy as Nigerians when projects go around the country, because it is our country, and at one point or the other, ourselves, our children, our relatives will benefit from those projects, whatever part of the country they are executed.
Well, interesting take. With just 4 minutes to wrap up the discussion. Yesterday was Human Rights Day 2025. Of course, concerns were raised as Nigeria's worsening rights crisis prompted for reform calls in the country. Some people say that journalists in particular have been the highest victims of some of these human rights abuses in the country. But do you share the same sentiment, Francisca? Being that you are a journalist and you know this better than anyone.
While this might not seem objective, but yes, journalists have had to bear a lot, and absolutely it shouldn't be so. Why? The journalists are doing their service to the nation by highlighting issues, by carrying out their watchdog role, which is why they are at the receiving end of this human rights abuse. Some people do not like the fact that, the journalists shed the light on some of the shady deals they do, or they don't like the fact that the journalists call them out for not performing their duties, and so they try to shush the journalists by carrying out these human rights abuses. And I'm happy that we have Hiriwa and several other bodies beaming their touch on these human rights abuses. We have them actually, in fact, the CSOs deserve a pat on the back for not keeping silent in the face of all these human rights abuses. So yes, journalists have had it rough, and then women too have had it rough. We have several cases of human rights abuses. In fact, the minister gave the figure for this year between January and about June, and it was already about 83,000 or something cases. And
of human rights abuses in the country?
Yes,
on
against
women
and girls. So you can imagine when it seems like 1 out of every 5 women is being abused every day. And then you ask yourself, why should this be so? So yes, we have a whole lot of human rights abuses going on. A whole lot of journalists have had to bear the brunt. We have physical abuse. In fact, recently at the national assignment, we saw a journalist from NTA. His camera was destroyed and his head was broken. Somebody's father left his house in the morning to go to work, to report, and then he comes back. Of course, he wasn't even going home. He was going to the hospital from that place because he was bleeding profusely. These are things that should not happen in this day and age.
Well, for some reason, the military and the Nigerian police have also been, pointed at in terms of orchestrating human rights abuses. We saw sometime within the week an incident that occurred in Adamawa State where there was a clash between the Bachama and the Chobo communities, a communal clash, and then some women of the Bachama community had come out to protest that they had called the military to intervene in the clash, and the military was delaying that intervention. And from reports and from videos that we saw, gunshots were fired and 7 women were killed. those women were buried just yesterday. But the defense headquarters has refuted that report, stating that no woman was killed. Well, these are the claims of the DHQ, but we know what we saw from the videos. How can we correct this, lack of trust at this point towards our security agencies and the fear that has been instilled in Nigerians regarding the police, the military, and other security agencies?
When they say police is your friend, you will have to show me somebody who believes that. When you see the kind of things we see, we have seen people being treated very unfairly. Yeah. We have seen force and brute being used. Sometimes it takes dialogue to achieve what you cannot achieve with brute force. Yeah. Now, if you ask me, these situations of the armed persons, of course, those arms are being bought with Nigerian taxpayers' money, and they are being used against the same people who fund these. The uniforms they wear them on behalf of Nigerians, and then they have to go up in arms against Nigerians. We think everybody has to go back to the drawing board and rethink what they are doing. Talking about the women, it's a very sad situation there. Of course, anywhere in the world, anybody who is unarmed is vulnerable, be it a woman or a man. But it makes it doubly worse if you go against a woman when you are up in arms. What were they doing? Protesting peacefully. Yeah. I don't think they bought arms. I don't think they destroyed anything. So whoever it was that shot at them, since the military says it didn't come from them, whoever it was that shot at them did something very grave. And we all know that karma comes around. If the military refuses that they didn't shoot at them, fine. But we all know that karma will take care of whatever it is that happened there, even when we cannot say for sure or for real whatever happened. But this is to appeal passionately to everybody. Women need to be protected. Women, for the most part, if you see them, they are harmless. It's just that they have to speak out. And I don't think it's a crime. It's a human right, in fact, to be able to speak out, and protest where they are peaceful and lawful protests.
They were
should be encouraged. Leaves. Yeah, and what in God's name can leaves do to anybody?
With a gun.
Let's assume they had a whole tree, not just leaves. What can that do to anybody? So it is very wrong for you to try to stifle their voices. They have a right to speak out. They did speak out, and then they had to pay the ultimate price. Too bad.
That's quite sad and disturbing situation coming in from Adamawa State. But of course, this is the brief overview of newspaper headline stories. I've been with my colleague Francisca Organ. We've been dissecting some national topics on front pages of newspaper publications across the country this morning.